Okay, let's talk about economics, and for a second, I want you to forget everything you think you know. Forget the complicated charts, forget the stock market. Because at its very heart, economics is all about one simple thing: choice. And you're about to find out that you're already kind of an expert at it.
We've all been there, right? The alarm goes off. It's way too early. You're warm, you're comfortable in your bed, but you've got that 9 a.m. lecture. So, what do? That split second where you weigh the pros and cons, well, that's exactly where we're going to start. See? That little mental debate you just had. That is economic thinking in a nutshell. It's the basic framework we use to analyze pretty much any decision, and it proves our first big idea.
That economics is literally everywhere. It's not just about money, it's about choice. And every single choice we make, from hitting the snooze button to picking a career, is driven by one fundamental, unchangeable fact of life.
And that fact has a name: scarcity. Think about it. We all have unlimited wants. We want more time, more money, more fun, but our resources are limited. There are only 24 hours in a day. Your bank account isn't endless. This basic conflict between what we want and what we have is the entire reason economics even exists. It's what forces us to choose.
So, how in the world do economists make sense of this giant, complicated web of choices that we all make every day? Well, they use special tools to simplify things, starting with something called a model.
And I absolutely love this analogy. An economic model is just like Google Maps. Is the map a perfect one-to-one replica of the real world? Of course not. It leaves out all the buildings and trees so you can see the roads. In the same way, an economic model leaves out the small details to show us the underlying patterns of our choices.
And what's the most important road sign on that map? Incentives. Economists basically work from one core assumption. If you want to understand why people do what they do, you've got to figure out their incentives. But, as we're about to see, incentives can work in really surprising ways. So, check out this fascinating real-world experiment. A daycare in Israel had a problem. Parents were always late picking up their kids. So a couple of economists had a simple idea: introduce a fine for late pickups. The incentive seems totally obvious, right? You punish lateness, you should get less of it. But nope, the exact opposite happened. Late pickups actually went up. So what on earth happened? Well, it turns out a fine is a price. Before, being late was a moral thing. Parents felt guilty about it. But the moment you introduce a fine, you take away the guilt and you turn a social problem into a simple transaction. All of a sudden, being late wasn't something to feel bad about. It was just a service you could pay for. And apparently, a lot of parents thought it was a pretty good deal. Now, economists use these kinds of ideas through two main lenses. You can think of it like a microscope versus a telescope. Microeconomics is the microscope. It zooms way in on individual choices like your personal budget or how one single company sets its prices. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, is the telescope. It zooms out to look at the big picture, things like national inflation, unemployment rates, and economic growth. And when they're looking through these lenses, they make two very different kinds of statements. Positive statements are about what is. They're facts. They can be tested with data. For example, the unemployment rate is 5%. Normative statements are about what ought to be. These are opinions. They're based on values, like we should lower the unemployment rate. One is about data, the other is about a debate. And knowing the difference between those two is super important because it helps us really dig into our next crucial concept: the idea that every single choice we make has a hidden cost, one that's not always written on the price tag. This is called opportunity cost. You've probably heard the saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, this is what it means. Even if someone gives you a free meal, you're still spending your time to eat it, time you could have spent doing something else. So the true cost of any choice is simply the value of the next best thing you had to give up to get it. Opportunity cost is why two different people can make two totally different but equally rational choices. Let's look at these two travelers. For traveler one, maybe a high-powered consultant, her time is worth a lot. So once you factor in the cost of her time, the faster plane is actually the cheaper option. But for traveler two, maybe a student whose time has a lower opportunity cost, the slower, cheaper bus is the no-brainer. The real cost is way more than just the ticket price. This all leads us to the exact tipping point of a decision, which economists call the reservation price. Let's go all the way back to that bed versus class example. Your reservation price is the absolute minimum value you need to get out of that lecture to make you feel okay about going versus staying in bed. It's the price that just barely gets you to throw off the covers.
Okay, but let's be real. Most of our decisions aren't these big, one-time, all-or-nothing choices. They're incremental. And that brings us to one of the most powerful ideas in all of economics, thinking at the margin. Think about it. You don't decide between studying for 24 hours straight or not studying at all. You decide whether to study for 1 more hour. You don't decide between buying all the strawberries in the store or none. You decide if you should grab 1 more box. That's marginal thinking. It's all about comparing the additional benefit of an action to its additional cost. Let's make this real. Imagine you're a movie producer. Each film costs $100 million to make. The first one brings in $300 million. Easy decision. The second one adds $180 million. Still a great deal. The third adds $120 million. You're still in the black. But now, what about that fourth one? You stop at 3. The rule is incredibly simple. As long as the extra benefit is greater than or equal to the extra cost, you do it. But for that fourth movie, the extra benefit is only $40 million, while the cost is $100 million. It's a money loser. Thinking at the margin tells you exactly when to stop.
Okay, so we've been looking at how individuals and firms make choices. Now let's zoom way, way out and see how these exact same principles, scarcity, trade-offs, efficiency, apply to entire countries.
To do this, economists use a neat little tool called the Production Possibilities Frontier, or PPF. Just imagine a country can only produce 2 things, let's say motorcycles and rice. The PPF is just a simple curve that shows all the maximum combinations of motorcycles and rice that country can produce if it's using all its resources and technology perfectly. It's basically a map of that country's economic limits.
And it's really simple to read. Any point right on the line means you're being totally efficient. You're at full capacity. Any point inside the line means you're being inefficient. Think of high unemployment or factories that are just sitting empty. And any point outside the line, that's just impossible to reach, at least on your own. But here's the magic. No country can produce outside of its PPF, but thanks to trade, it can consume outside of it. By having each country specialize in what it does best and then trading with each other, every country can end up with more stuff than they ever could have made by themselves. Trade literally breaks the limits of production. So there you have it. Scarcity, incentives, opportunity cost, thinking at the margin. These aren't just abstract theories from a textbook. They're real tools you can use to make better decisions in your own life. So the next time you're facing a big choice, a new job, a major, anything, I want you to ask yourself the economist's question: what's the real opportunity cost here? Thanks for watching.